Although I've been drawing and coloring for years and years, I still feel like I can improve in a lot of areas. Sometimes when you get too comfortable with a certain kind of technique, you forget that you have room to grow and expand your horizons. And that's what I'm going to try and do today. So hi everyone, I'm Ward and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and today we're going to try and work on our coloring skills. Now, although over the years I've improved a lot, at some point I didn't even color until I got out of college. Like, it took a really long time for me to even start coloring. But when I did, I realized that the way I colored was very one-dimensional, and I still have that problem today. And even though I've kind of perfected my technique at blending in markers together and making sure they transition nicely and smoothly, I kind of also need to work on the technique of actually making something look not flat. The best way to achieve something that kind of looks like 3D on a 2D piece of paper is using your colors in a smart way, and of course working on your lighting skills. For me, I feel like a lot of the time, although I color in skin pretty nicely and it transitions well, and it doesn't look too bad in all honesty, I do still feel like it's very flat. And the reason for that is because I mostly kind of stick to one kind of color family. Like if I'm coloring a tan skin tone, I'm going down the tan skin tone line to color, or if it's a lighter or darker one, I kind of stick within the same range to kind of make sure that it ends up blending out seamlessly. The problem with this though is that it can get very flat very quickly because there's no dimension in color. Take for example our own skin, right? Everybody's skin has different undertones. We're either a cool, neutral, or a warm undertone. Now, some of you might be wondering, what is my skin undertone? The best way to tell is by looking at your wrist veins. Depending on the color they give off is what determines what kind of undertone you really are. If your wrist is purpley, or not wrist, if the wrist is purple, you need help. If your veins are like purpley or blue, then you're more likely than not a cool undertone. And your skin kind of has this pink, red, or blue tinge to it. On the other hand, if your veins are green or olive green, then you're more likely than not a warm undertone, which means your skin has yellow, gold, or a peach tinge to it. But if your veins are giving off a bluish, greenish kind of color, then you're more likely than not a neutral undertone. This means that your skin doesn't have pink, red, blue, or yellow, gold, peach tinge. That means that you're just completely in the middle, which is me. I'm a neutral undertone, I have olive skin, and my veins are very much bluish green, and it took me a while to figure that out, and I did years ago. That was during the time where I was trying to figure out what foundation color I was, and if I was more this leaning or that leaning, and then once I found out I was neutral, everything kind of made sense. And I'm genuinely kind of surprised that I never really, connected the dots between different undertones when it comes to makeup versus different undertones when it comes to drawing. It makes sense that when I draw, I should be using more kind of undertone colors, such as blues, purples, and greens to kind of give the proper, shadowing and shading to the character's skin so it looks more lively. Now, at some point, I do believe I was using, purple to at least give off some shadow and shading, but I feel like that's different when it comes to shadow and shading versus doing something to actually make the skin look a little bit more like skin. I feel like those two things are completely different from each other. Often I find videos online or little tutorials or little, advices or, oh my god, what is the word, bro? Art tips. Thank you, Word. Often I find little tips and tricks and stuff from people online saying, use purple if you wanna, do shadow. But what my brain kind of connected with that is it's shadowing for the skin and not so much shadow because it's a shadow. I know that's probably not how everybody thinks, but that is how I think and how I kind of thought with that process. So whenever I would use purple on the skin, like I was using it for certain undertones, it didn't work very well, and the reason why is because it just didn't look right. Now, you can use some kind of purple for undertones as well. A lot of people do it, but I think people kind of know how to do it correctly, and I don't. I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm kind of dumb sometimes, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Things take me a very long time to learn and understand and find out a technique that works for me, because my brain is it's a silly little guy. My brain's a silly little guy sometimes. Now, what I found better to do actually for myself was use the bluish greenish kind of colors for the skin to kind of help give it some nice shadow in some areas, and then I would also go on top of it with other colors such as like pink, and then that pink would help create a kind of more natural purple for that skin tone, or pinkish purple, and give it a nice dynamic to it instead of just a blatant purple. Sometimes when we use colors that are already mixed or like they're ready for us to use, it kind of takes away from the, I'm gonna say quote unquote, naturalness of the skin tone from the drawing. And I feel like that's because a lot of the time these colors that are already pre-mixed and pre-made are being made with the intent to be used as just that color. It's it's like a purple marker because you're going to go in using the color purple, not because you're going to use it as like an undertone or as something to kind of enhance a certain area. It's just made with the idea that it's a purple marker. That's kind of more than anything the artist's job, to take that color and then create a kind of dynamic with it. The companies that make these colors just kind of make the color because you need the color, but the artist takes that color and transforms it into a piece. It makes it into this thing that's alive in front of you. That's why studying these little things actually make a huge difference in the end, because you don't want to spend hours upon hours on a piece just for it to look flat or thinking you could have done much better with it. So, from here on, I'm going to try and make sure I keep in mind that I have to use at least some kinds of greens, blues, some purples, and some olive greens as well, because, you know, a green versus an olive green is a little different. But whenever I draw skin, I'm going to try and use those to kind of help give it a lot more dimension so it doesn't look so flat. Now, another thing I do need to work on besides that is lighting, and that's a whole different animal. But I'll admit I need work on that too. One day I'm going to sit down and really try and learn the idea of light source, where it comes from. I have a general idea and I can picture it in my mind, but when it comes to me translating it on paper, I kind of lose what I'm doing and how to actually, I guess, draw it properly. But that'll be on its own time when Ward is sitting there and she's like, you know what, let's learn light. For now though, no. Not now. In a little bit. Now, the one thing that I do want to try and work on as well is letting loose a little bit, okay? When it comes to coloring, I have this bad tendency to be pretty rigid in how I color things, and my brain kind of tells me that I have to match colors up so the drawing looks cohesive. Which is nice, right, to a degree, when the outfit kind of matches colors and, it gives off a certain kind of vibe. Beautiful, good, I love it. But the problem is I do that with, every character, and I don't allow myself to throw in random bits of color or things that are kind of mismatched and just look a little, out there, which I like the idea of drawing things that are out there. So I want to kind of let go a little bit, and instead of having to make sure this matches that and this should be looking like this so it complements this, I kind of wanted to try and stray away from it a little bit, especially with this piece. I felt like whenever I was drawing all his outfit together, I just wanted random colors to be everywhere because that's just the kind of person that he gives off. For example, a lot of the time I won't give characters colored hair because if I have a neutral kind of hair color, then the outfit can be whatever it wants to be. But that's kind of really stiff thinking. It just doesn't make any sense for me to always kind of have a certain range of hair color and then not expand because I want the outfit to look a certain way. doesn't make any sense at all, but my brain works like that, so I gotta try and break out of that. So as a result, for him, I gave him this bright pink fuchsia kind of looking hair, and it looks beautiful and gorgeous. I love it so much because it's so vibrant, and it has all these nice tones to it where it's kind of reddish at the roots and then kind of outwardly pink, and then a lighter purple in the middle, so this way it kind of gives off a nice dimension. The shirt, I wanted something kind of on the plainer side just to break off from the color in between everything, if you can even call it a shirt. It's like a string. It's like barely like a piece of fabric over his chest. But I wanted something that kind of broke in between everything, so like a lighter kind of greenish color, and the lighter greenish color does call back onto the boots, which kind of are like this foresty green, almost like a watermelon kind of print to them, which look pretty cool. Then you also have the skirt, which is this super bright orange that gradiates? Wow. Gradients from this kind of yellow honey color to a darker orangey brown to give it some nice dimension. And I like the fact that all these colors are so far off from each other, but at the same time can look well on paper. So that's something that I kind of have to just get used to and, you know, warm up to the idea of, and I'm very willing to warm up to the idea of it. The accessories also kind of, I guess, quote-unquote, don't match, but I like that idea. The armband that he has up there is kind of purpley, pink, and blue. The chain around his waist is pink and also has little hints of blues and greens, and the earrings are aqua. I did want to kind of give the idea that, you know, he's a star, which is why there's a bunch of different stars everywhere. So I kind of gave that as a theme for him as a character, and I included a bunch of them in the background just because I feel like, I don't know, I thought it was cute. Like, he's the star boy, you know what I mean? Like, I really like that idea for him, and he definitely gives off that kind of energy. Oh, and one thing that I always want to try and see if I can work on as well is just the idea of not lining something. I love the way this looks unlined, and I definitely had to line it. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but that's just something that I was looking at. I was looking at the shape and form of everything that I was coloring in, and I was like, wow, this just looks really nice on its own even before the line art. And I want to try and figure out a way to actually draw something without line art, but every time I try, it just like, I'm like, no, dude, it does not, it does not look right. Give up immediately. So I don't bother with trying that whole thing out. I feel like something like that is a little bit easier to kind of achieve when painting, but when using markers and ink, it's a little bit more, I feel like a little bit more practice is involved, and it's a little bit more of a different technique. And since I feel like my technique is so ingrained with line art, I'm like, it doesn't look right without it. So maybe if I try doing the lineless technique with a different medium, I'll be much more open to try it and not think it looks weird without it. Some things here I didn't line though, just because I felt like it looked good on its own and it didn't need it, like his accessories of the armband, the chain, and his his rings on his fingers. So I feel like depending on the thing that is in the drawing, I can kind of work around whether I want to line it, want to not line it, and even use line art in a smart way. Like for the waistband of the skirt, I kind of broke it off into little pieces to make it look like it's a different kind of material and that it's kind of stretched along him. So after I finished the drawing, I looked at it and I was like, well, does this look any better than my other drawings? And I went back through my sketchbook and I looked at all the skin tones, and I closed the book for the night and I came back the next day and I went back and looked at the drawing and I was like, wow, this actually does look a lot better than my previous skin tone colors, and that's because it looks a little bit more like an actual skin tone. There's enough kind of dynamics and tinge in different areas, and it looks a lot more 3D than compared to a lot of my other drawings. So I achieved what I wanted. It's not flat. I love the kind of colors that it gives off, and it looks so dynamic. I truly love it. So I'm gonna try and do that more often. So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember, I love you. Bye!